This video should have been posted yesterday, but I had a few problems and sadly it's going to have to be a double today. So this is number one, and I'll probably make and upload another one later today. The main issue that I had yesterday was that my mouse ran out of battery and had to be charged. It's an iMac that I'm working on, so the mouse is cordless, and I had to unplug the keyboard, which is fine because the keyboard still works unplugged, but I couldn't continue editing. Anyway, that's why there was no video yesterday. This is me setting up for a podcast. I recorded a podcast yesterday afternoon and I was just getting everything started, and I thought I'd film a bit just to share with you the process.
Hey mate,
Hello.
how you doing?
You all right? Yeah?
Yeah, good.
Oh, very good. After having a brief pre-podcast or pre-interview chat just with the co-host, which is always nice when we have the opportunity to do that, the guest arrives, we have a lovely chat. It was very interesting, and then after that I start to get out the camera and get everything ready with a special video in mind that I mentioned in yesterday's upload, and I was just a bit disappointed that it didn't end up happening because it's something which I really thought would be a special type of drawing, and I'll explain what went wrong, but I also did film the process. The interview was great, that all went fine, but the drawing process and the materials didn't work out as I had anticipated. This is what happened. I mentioned yesterday that I was going to do a texture page and include the number 17 somewhere in there. And what I tried to do was have a pot of ink and something to dip in it. Now I do have dip pens, I have several dip pens, but I thought I'll use a feather because that to me seems really nice and interesting for mark making, but it just didn't work like I thought it would. It just wouldn't make those marks that I needed for a reliable nib, really. So I ended up having to scrap that idea, and instead I bailed on that and went instead to get a dip pen. So I got out a set which I've not used before, quite a nice fancy set, and they were great. It took me a while to figure out, I don't know, certain things about the nibs, as far as they were in different little wells in the case, and I had to use a magnet to fish them out, and some of them had shifted into the other well, so there was 2 or 3 nibs in one well, and I had to fix that. Well, I didn't have to, but I'm kind of, I've got this need for saying, okay, if it's supposed to be there and it tells me what number it is on this slip, this piece of paper, then I'd rather have it organised like that. Lovely. Here's the problem. The dip pen was fine. The ink I decided to use, instead of India ink, I decided to use Waterman's fountain pen ink, and that is much heavier, and I didn't realise that. It's much heavier ink than Indian ink. By heavier I just mean it was bleeding through the page enough that it was starting to make the page fluff up when I'd go back over a hatched area, which is no good for me. I need the ink to be able to sit on top of itself and not be so, I don't know, so absorbent. Or the page would be absorbent, I suppose, but not absorb so much into the page that it's leaving puddles and creating this problem. So my first attempt at the drawing didn't end up being the one that I was happy with. I had to leave that and instead do something else. And just one of those things, it has to happen. So I gave up on that idea and started from scratch with the same ink and the same materials. This dip pen was actually really fun to use. I do appreciate this type of a tool which is so precise, and if it weren't for me using the wrong ink, I would have been able to do a lot more with it. So before the month is over, I will make sure to do another texture page attempt at least with Indian ink and show you how that worked out. But for this drawing, I do really enjoy this type of process of laying down lines, and I can't emphasize enough how little input I have consciously in the shape. I just put the marks down and see what emerges. Sorry, I'm having a bit of indigestion. It's a bit of a theme for this channel. So that's literally what I do, is I just start making marks, and usually they taper off into a point and then see where that leads to. And the only time when I actually did have some input into what's happening is at this point now, when I start doing the number 17, which I do here. And that's something which I don't know if you would have seen it if I didn't have it zoomed in on the camera, but there it is. That's the point where I did it. And I don't mind that too much, because at least it looks like vague patches. I didn't want it looking too clean, so that you can't really tell unless you're looking for it. I think if you weren't told that the numbers were in there, you probably wouldn't know that there are numbers included. And that's the way I prefer with this type of a drawing. With others, I don't mind putting the number in. Anyway, the point being that this drawing was quite a relaxing, enjoyable process after having that failure at the start, which I just didn't like how the drawing was going and didn't appreciate how the paper was reacting to the ink. So it had to be scrapped at that point, which is a shame. So the next time I do it, it will probably be inside of panels, and I'm really going to try to channel that side of myself that really appreciates the expression that you can have in different mark making shapes. Whereas for this, I don't see the patterns emerging, but I definitely see the shape once it's there as of the first few marks, and start to repeat that process. So there's definitely part of myself that is guided to continue with a theme that I can see emerge, but I don't actively seek it out at the start.